Hello and welcome to Michael's Minty Music for today. Today we review the Beatles' 1966 album Revolver. This was their last album they made while they were still touring, and it's pretty much perfect. Definitely one of their best albums and probably one of the greatest albums of all time here. This is a big one. This is the track listing, and these are the tracks added to my playlist. 11 out of 14, technically all of them but 3. Now, those 3 are still good songs. I just didn't particularly like them individually on my very first listen. The 3 are I'm Only Sleeping, Love You Too, and For No One, which are all slower and a bit wacky on their own. In the context of the album, though, they're all essential, and they help make the album flow incredibly along with the other tracks. And that's really what makes the album incredible. You can't get rid of any of the tracks here. It would ruin the vibe and flow of the album. You also can't shuffle any tracks around. It just wouldn't end up the same. It would have a different feeling to it. It starts off mid-speed but still strong with Taxman and then goes into slower stuff. Eleanor Rigby, incredible on its own, is basically just a transition track here, although that doesn't diminish it at all. But it does provide a good section to go into the side 1 slow section, going through I'm Only Sleeping into the more psychedelic Love You Too. Finally, the album slows down to its lowest point, its valley, with Here, There, and Everywhere, the slowest song. From there, we have another weird transition track in Yellow Submarine. It's mid-speed but still jaunty. It provides the exact opposite effect of Eleanor Rigby, signaling that the second side of the album is probably going to be a little bit more upbeat. And then the final track on side 1 continues this theme. She Said is probably the perfect track for the ending of the first side. It feels like the ending of a chapter, not the ending of a book. You feel that there's almost definitely going to be more, and yet it sounds clear that this is an ending of sorts. Then we move on to side 2, which is probably one of the best second sides on any album, and is possibly even a little better than side 1, although the styles are different. Side 2 is a lot more quicker and more upbeat, which I do prefer. Good Day Sunshine is a great opener, upbeat, yet building off of She Said. The album probably surpasses the energy of the opener Taxman here, especially with the slightly more upbeat And Your Bird Can Sing right after. It takes a quick dive back to slow with For No One, which is probably the second slowest song on the album, behind Here, There, and Everywhere, which provides sort of a transition. From then on, though, the album increases the energy incrementally, which is very impressive. Dr. Robert, I Want to Tell You, and Got to Get You Into My Life are each faster and more upbeat, with the pinnacle being that 6th track, Got to Get You Into My Life. And then, with that peak, the album delivers its stinger in the form of Tomorrow Never Knows, a song that defies the speeds of the earlier psychedelic tracks, and is somehow both fast and slow at the same time. Perfect mix of sort of psychedelic noodling and rock consistency. And with that, we have the perfect album almost. Every track here is good, and the flow is basically genius. There's not much more to say. This is pretty much a peak album here, peak 60s psychedelic pop rock. You'd be hard-pressed to find any albums that even compare to this one, much less compete with it. There was a single released before the album, along with a non-album single, that had 2 tracks on it, Eleanor Rigby at the front and Yellow Submarine on the back, which are the 2 most famous songs here. Only the Beatles can release 2 essentially transition tracks as singles and have them be amazingly popular. But for my favorite here, it depends on the day, but I usually go with That Peak, Got to Get You Into My Life. I like the upbeat stuff, and that's the most upbeat. Really, most of the tracks here could be my favorite on any given day, though, but that one's probably the most out of the days. I rank this album the best out of the 13 albums the Beatles released. I think this is the best one, and for good reason. The only other album that comes close to this one in terms of album composition is Sgt. Pepper's, which is right below it. While the quality is all basically maxed out for the Beatles' top 6 albums, only Revolver and Sgt. Pepper's have the perfection of the album flow to go along with the incredible songs. It's really close between the 2, but I think that Revolver might be a little bit more inspired. They almost tried too hard and thought too much about it on Sgt. Pepper's for it to be quite as good as Revolver, although Sgt. Pepper's is also one of the greatest albums of all time, so it's hard to decide here between gold and gold. It's more just a personal preference for which one you prefer more, but those 2 are definitely the best. Additionally, this album takes my top spot from 1966, although it's the only album I've heard from 1966. That being said, it would be really difficult to take this spot. Pretty sure Revolver beats out almost all of the other sort of top albums from the other years. So it would take something that's also on that level, which I'm pretty sure doesn't exist in 1966. So thank you for watching. Next up, I will be reviewing Syd Barrett's debut solo album, The Madcap Laughs, released in 1970. He was a founding member of Pink Floyd, but he left early and released 2 solo albums. So stay tuned for that, and as always, stay minty.